You know, all quilts are not created equal. Some are trickier to quilt than others. Today we'll look at some tips and tricks for handling problem quilts. And Carol Selepec stops by to share some of her award-winning secrets. Then I'll tell you about the best way for professional quilters and potential customers to find each other: advertising. So stay tuned.
Linda's Longarm Quilting is made possible by Gamble Quilting Machine Company, bringing quality, innovation, and service to quilters around the world for over a quarter of a century. By YLI, making decorative threads that help you unleash your imagination. By Statler Stitcher, providing automation to enhance and expand your longarm quilting business. And by Hobbs Bonded Fibers.
We've got a lot to do today. We're going to look at handling problem quilts, especially those pesky wavy borders. We'll get a chance to crosshatch an Irish chain quilt top. And I'm going to talk about advertising for the professional quilter. But first, take a quick trip with me to meet a special guest. Carol Selepec is here with us today. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you.
Well, what we want to know from you is, how long have you been a longarm quilter?
For about 6.5 years now.
6.5 years. And how did you get interested in longarm quilting?
Actually, I kind of quit my other job and got an offer at a shop, and so I started at a shop. And I worked there for like 3.5 years, and then I decided to go out on my own and bought my own.
And so you do this still as a commercially, or do you do this as a hobby?
I do it as a business,
Uh-huh.
and I work out of my own studio.
That's terrific. Good for you. And already you're an award-winning quilter. Let's take a look at some of those award-winning quilts.
Okay.
What's the name of this one, Carol?
It's Red and Green Triumph.
And it's just gorgeous. The quilting design is so complementary to the applique work. Is this trapuntoed?
Yes, it is. It just has a little bit of trapunto just in these raised areas. There's no trapunto in any of the applique designs.
Looks almost like a cording through here. It's just gorgeous.
Thank you.
And what is the name of this one?
This is Irish Cream. And this has a wool batting in it, and I made my own designs to fit the areas in between the stars.
Oh, they're beautiful. Now, is this trapuntoed with the wool batting?
No, it's just wool. I wanted to try something new, and I used just the wool, and then I used a very small stipple to make the design raise.
And the thread looks like this is a little finer thread.
Yes, it's actually a poly thread, so it is a very...
Like an embroidery thread?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. So let's take a look at this beautiful quilt that you've done while it's hanging in Houston with a ribbon on it. Congratulations, Carol.
Thank you.
And the name of this quilt is?
A Touch of Yellow.
A Touch of Yellow, because you have
some dyed wool batting in there.
Dyed wool batting in it. So let's see how you do this process. First of all, you have to start with the design. Where do you get your designs?
I go through some books and magazines until I find a little piece of this or a little piece of that I like. And then I take one of those elements and I draw it out on graph paper, and then I'll fold my paper until I get, like my quarter panel, so that I can start putting in the design in all 4 places, so it's nice and even and symmetrical.
So just section it off and then kind of repeat that.
Right.
Okay.
And then I draw it on there, and then I go over it with a heavy marker so that I can see it whenever I will tape it down to my countertop, and then I will put my whole cloth over top so I can see the design through there, and I take a washable blue marker and I trace the design, which you can see on this piece here. And as you can see, I have the dyed yellow batting underneath, and I've cut some of that away.
Now, how did you, you just put this on your longarm machine then with just the batting and the top fabric.
Yes, and I used a wash away thread in the top only.
Okay.
And I just used a cotton thread in the bobbin.
And I noticed that you haven't stitched around every single element in here with the wash away thread.
No, you really don't need to. You just need to go around, like say your feathers on the outside edge, because you're going to go back with your permanent thread, whatever one you choose,
To do your detail.
to do your detail work. And then the first stuff will wash away and you will have just your permanent thread.
Final stitching.
Yes.
This looks like tedious work. Can you show us how you cut some of this away?
Sure, it's it's very tedious and you have to be very careful with it. And I basically start and just kind of rough cut the excess away, and then after I get that out of the way, then I'll go back and trim really close, and you have to be really careful.
What if
So
you
you don't-
snip your quilt accidentally?
Well, first you cry. And then you figure out what can I do
What
to
you
fix
can-
it.
to mend it. I
Yes.
see, I see.
And then you figure out what extra little quilting touch you can put in there to cover up. where
Okay,
you
so
have
it's not
cut your
the end of the
quilt.
world,
No, it's not the end of the world.
but you must be very careful, I imagine,
Yes.
to go around.
And there is a cut on my touch of yellow,
Oh,
and it has been repaired. And if you can find it, good for you.
I don't think I'll be looking for that. I would imagine in competition that you really have to be very accurate with this cutting, especially if you're using a darker color that's going to show through something like this.
Yeah, the judges don't like to have any of the colored batting outside your stitched area. So you want to kind of maintain it inside of your design.
The thread, okay. And then you put that piece on the machine with whatever you're going to use, your final bat, I suppose,
Yes.
and your lining
Yes.
after this is all cut. So this one has all been cut, and there's still some blue area here. Will you show us how you go around that trapunto and what you're going
Sure.
to do there? This is a beautiful design that you're doing. Do you have a name for it?
I'm doing sort of a small shell motif to fill in the background, and then what it will do will make the designs, the trapunto designs, just kind of pop off of there and really stand out.
Now on this piece you've already stitched around for your final stitching. You've already gone around the motifs.
Yes, I already went with the regular thread around most of the motifs. I have a couple over there that I hadn't outlined just yet.
This is an elegant design, and the manner in which you're going around these is just wonderful.
You just want to work your way up to the edge of it and just really make them stand out.
That's a good tip. It looks like you're really staying close to your design too. I would imagine that's going to help raise up the motif.
Yeah, it makes it pop right up there.
So it would be an important tip to make sure that you sew close to the trapunto to raise it up.
Yeah, you want to sew close and you want to sew pretty solid so that you want to keep your background stitching fairly even so that it kind of pops up the same. Because after you wash it, sometimes some of it will pop up much wider, and you can notice the difference.
Do you use a certain kind of thread when you're doing this? What did you use on your touch of yellow?
I used a 100% cotton thread, and that's really my thread of choice. I usually choose a color that matches my background. If you want your design to really show up, you can use a different color fabric and then a contrasting thread. But you have to be very careful, because then all this little backtracking stuff is going to show up really well.
Yes. Well, that is just turning out wonderful. I can see that it's really raising up our designs there, and you're so good at it.
Thank you. You just keep working your way around, and with this design you can jump from one place to another, and you can go back and fill in a spot that is a little bit wider than what you'd like it to be.
Well, that is a beautiful stippling design, and thank you so much for sharing this method of the dyed batting with us and sharing your beautiful quilts with us.
Thank you for having me.
When long-arm quilters and piecers are looking to connect, the best way for them to find each other is advertising. As a professional quilter, your best advertising is your own good reputation. That can also work in reverse. I find that advertising in my local guild's newsletter is also a wonderful way to hit your target audience. Display your quilting at a quilt show. People really read the names at the quilt show, and if they like your quilting, they'll give you a call. Ads in Quilting magazine are also a wonderful way. You'll get quilt tops from all over the country. Pass out cards to friends and neighbors. You might even place some in some of the local fabric stores. Whether you're looking for a long-arm quilter or you want people to know that you are one, you'll find that advertising is the way to go. Hi, our special project today is an Irish chain. And I know many of you may have already pieced an Irish chain. You can make single Irish chains, double, or even triple Irish chains. Usually those Irish chains are cross-hatched down through the chain, and then in the blank area that's left, which is an odd shape, there's a design put in there. So I want to show you how to do that more traditional type of quilting on the Longarm machine. We're going to use a long guide, not a smaller ruler, and the reason that we cannot use our channel lock or use a device on the back of the machine is because these points may not line up exactly with those guides because they might be off just a little bit. It's just fabric. So let me show you how you use this guide. First of all, because the canvas can be a little slick when I put the guide up there, I'm just going to put a piece of batting up there, and that will help that wing hang on to that roller bar, like that. Then I'll come up here and I'll go down and get my thread, bring my bobbin thread up, and take a few little security stitches there. There we go, and I'll just get that thread out of the way. Then I'll line my guide up like this and push gently against the bar. And I may have to make some adjustments as I come down because, again, everything isn't going to line up perfectly in a straight because it is just piecing, and even though in a perfect world everything would be perfect, this is not. Now if I keep my guide exactly 1/4 inch away, my foot is 1/2 inch. That really helps me because if it's right against my foot, that means the needle goes in at 1/4 inch if my foot's 1/2 inch. So if I keep that right against there, and you'll notice my right hand is only going to turn on the machine and then gently pull the machine down. You see, and I'm making sure that I hit those points. Now notice my left hand is out here on this bar. My left hand is not up here because I have no control over this long guide unless my left hand is over here on the bar out here to help stabilize this. So I can just keep coming down. If I need to make adjustments, I can do that. And on the back of the quilt, it will look straight. So I can come all the way down, and if I need to stop, because you can't go all the way down to the bottom of the quilt and keep rolling and cross-hatching, you can only go to a certain point. Then I'm going to make sure that if I'm in a dark color with dark thread, that's where I'm going to stop in that color, so that when I come back and meet that up, that I won't have a real detectable place where I have stopped and started. Now, just so that you can see it a little bit better, I can go down and I can go up. So on this line I'm going to go up, and you'll see the thread a little bit better here as I come up and meet these points. Again, you can see this hand is just gently guiding the machine along the side of the ruler. And if I need to make adjustments, I certainly can at any point along the way. There we go, and then I'm going to again make adjustments. There we go, and right up to the corner. So I just continue to cross hatch back and forth. That works very nicely. Now you can also use your regular ruler, and I do have the extended base on here. Most of the long arm machines, you can add a base like this to give you a nice flat surface. And in between, all I have to do is continue to stitch in the ditch as I come down like that. Hold my ruler here, and again come down point to point, and then I move my ruler, making adjustments as I come, because as much as we try, we may have just a little variation from point to point, and then I continue down like that. So I want to show you some other variations that you can do in this chain area. You don't always have to cross hatch. One of the variations would be a continuous curve, and that's just like a half a circle. And we can just do half circle, and you meet the intersections like that, and then you come back like this. We do this on Lone Stars too, and then just go up to the next section like that, and then back. And then you come down the other direction and over and down, and that makes it lovely. It looks like you've circled, you see, each of these areas because you can't see the dark thread inside, and so that makes a very lovely finish for that chain. Another idea would be just to put a pinwheel inside of each of these squares. Try to be as consistent as possible, so into the middle and out, into the middle and out, into the middle and out, into the middle and out. And you would certainly figure out a system so you would be going across and back, and so you do it in the most continuous fashion you could. Another idea that is often used is simply to meander over all of these chains and still set your design in the plain area, but just meander over all of it like that. So that's going to quilt all that area and flatten it out. And depending on what thread you use, there's so many fabulous threads now. A variegated thread over that would be just gorgeous. So there's some ideas that you can use in the chain area of the quilt. Now I'm going to change the thread because I want to show you some ideas that you can do in the blank areas of the Irish chain. I've been stitching in the ditch around this Irish chain. I want to show you how I've been doing that. I think it's really important, even though you've crosshatched, to contain that area, and it makes such a difference on your quilt. When I go horizontally, I just sort of freehand it there. When I do vertically, I just put my ruler there, and you see I stay right in that ditch. And I have put on a variegated embroidery thread to do this work down here, and that completes that Irish chain. So that is really secure, that whole area. Now I'm going to place a design in that area, and to do that I can use the laser light right in the front of the machine. I have stabilized it with a piece of acrylic here, and I've moved the laser light up to the top of the machine. This is going to go on point. This little pattern is called, I just made this little pattern up, but it's called Irish Luck. Now I will get my center, what I think is my center, and then I will put this pattern where I believe it's going to go, and then all I have to do is follow the actual template here is scored. So all I have to do is follow those score lines all the way up. And I can see I'm just a little bit off, so I can move it like that. I don't have to pin. I don't have to tape. It's like just like a little mouse here on a computer. Just move it around on the template. There I am. I'm centered. So I can find a good place to start. I think I'll start up here. I hate to start in the middle of a design because the first place your eye goes is in the middle of the design. And I'll go around this in regulated and just follow my design with the laser light. Just about finished because I know where I started. The nice thing about this front laser is as I come up here, I can look right here at my project, and I can take my left hand and stop exactly where I started, and I just went over the stitches where I started just a little bit. And while I'm right here, I can start and do my stipple around there. Now I want to talk just a little bit about that stippling. It's really important that you have a stipple strip. And this is simply all different sizes of stipple from very tiny up to very large. And if you are a professional quilter, you must have this because your customers are going to want to choose what size stipple. And you need to know what size did they mean when they said small stipple. Also, it is a nice guide because if I decide that I'm going to do this #1 stipple, I can keep this #1 stipple right by my project as I'm doing it and compare it all the way through the quilt. I don't have to roll the quilt back to the beginning to see if I'm doing the same size, because sometimes we get tired and so our stipple gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So make sure you make a stipple strip. Even if you're on a home machine, you're going to want to use a stipple strip to compare your work with. So then we would go around and stipple to outline, staying very, very close to the project with tiny stipple like this, all the way around the design. And then when we finished going around the design, outlining that design with our stipple, then we will continue out and fill in the entire area. And you can see this one is done. And then I went inside and I put a little diamond shape inside, and I love that. Very pretty. Now, I also wanted to show you that you can do a freehand design in there. So I'm going to move this over. And in this square, even though I haven't stabilized it yet, which I would much prefer to do, I'm going to start in here and just do a nice little feather design for you. Freehand. I'm reaching out into those corners. You see, I just used my corners as my guide, making teardrops here. It's like a double figure 8, like that, okay? And I got to that point. Let me cut my thread here. And I'm going to put this in about 9 stitches to the inch because I can go a little faster. I'm going to go clear up into this little square. See, sometimes it's hard to find patterns that go right up into that area with your Irish chain. And I can just fill in this whole area with this feather. Come back up here like this, filling those feathers in. And then all the way down again, teardrop here, into that area, 2 and 3, and down again, 1, 2, and 3. Just making sure that I get the same amount on every side so it looks like I have a really consistency in my pattern. And out again. Now these are just like teardrop shapes. And then one more to finish off this. And I'll show you also why I like to have that stitch in the ditch. I think it's pretty apparent the difference between this one that I haven't stitched yet, but I will go back and stitch around that. There we go. Put a couple stitches there in the middle and cut our thread. And you can see, you see how we get some space in here? It's just not quite as clean as it is over here when it's stitched in the ditch. So definitely go back and stitch in the ditch. But you can see how fast either one of those are. So you can place a pattern in there real easy. Now I want to show you something else. I want to talk about some tips and techniques for quilting those pesky wavy borders today. This is a Seven Sisters, an antique quilt that I bought. It's hand-pieced. And as many of those antique quilts are when they're hand-pieced, the borders, you can see how much fullness there's going to be in this. How am I going to quilt this? It's also very dog-eared. So I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. That's one thing that you want to look for when you have an older quilt that's hand-pieced. Some of those have wavy borders. Here's another one that has pieces that are on the edge that are bias. There's going to be some stretch in those, and so when I go to do that, that's going to be totally flared. So I'm going to have to be careful there. As I'm actually quilting this one, I can take little tucks in these little seams if I'm very careful and I do an all-over meandering pattern. Another thing to watch for in case you are looking for problems is if you have more than one border on the quilt. If the border is added incorrectly, each time the border is added, it will be compounded. The problem will be compounded. This one happens to be very flat, but I wanted to show you what I meant by having those 3 borders. This one will be a dream to quilt. So how do we deal with that border as we're quilting it? I've already secured my thread here and I want to show you what you can do on the machine. The best thing to say to your customer or the best thing to suggest to your quilter is go ahead and do a small stipple out in that border, and you can ease that in if you push ahead of the machine. So watch what I do. As I'm doing my stipple, can you see how I'm pushing ahead on the machine? I'm actually pushing this down. Now your right hand's going to have to do a little bit of work here because your hands are pushing against each other, but that's the only way that you can ease some of that extra fullness in. And also you could take a tuck. If there's a seam there, you can take a little tuck, and then as you take that tuck, you just quilt along that seam using your wavy line, sort of like a serpentine line, and so that really eases and grabs up all that thread and just takes it up. So we've talked about some great techniques for the Irish chain, and if you're a piecer, consider leaving nice big areas open for your quilter to really bring out the soul of the quilt. And also pay attention to those pesky borders. If you have a wavy border, it could be a real challenge. Next time on Linda's Longarm Quilting, we're talking about quilting partners. We'll see how I stitch around applique and set in designs to be a good partner to the people who bring me their quilt tops. We'll talk with Sherry Meineke Johnson, one of my favorite partners, and look at the award-winning quilts we've teamed up to create. And I'll share my best advice for professional quilters to make good partnerships. Remember, if I can do it, you can do it. See you next time.
For more information, visit us on the web at www.lindaslongarmquilting.com.
Okay. Don't get in the shot again. Okay. No. I don't want to do it again. That's all right.
Linda's Longarm Quilting is made possible by Gamel Quilting Machine Company, bringing quality, innovation, and service to quilters around the world for over a quarter of a century. By YLI, making decorative threads that help you unleash your imagination. By Statler Stitcher, providing automation to enhance and expand your long arm quilting business. And by Hobbs Bonded Fibers,